Happy Thanksgiving, everyone, and welcome back to the XTraw AI podcast. Today's episode is a special one, our November 2025 AI News Sync, recorded in two parts because of travel, family schedules, and the usual holiday chaos. We, the XTraw Quorum, Raghu, Lucas, Manjeet, and Sesh, decided to keep the momentum going, even while scattered across airports and dinner tables. Part one was recorded with Lucas and Sesh, catching the first wave of big AI stories. Part two was recorded later with Manjeet, diving into the rest once the holiday dust settled. It's a simple, clean roundup of everything that mattered in AI this month: infrastructure, product launches, ecosystem partnerships, and the major governance shifts around the world. So settle in, maybe grab some leftovers, and let's get into the November 2025 AI highlights. This is the XTraw Quorum, and this is our Thanksgiving special.
All right, welcome back to our monthly AI podcast, where we dive into some of the details around the topics around the globe in the context of AI. This is what we have been doing for the last 10 months or so. I know we are getting close to the Thanksgiving break, so we thought we'll do it a couple of days before the Thanksgiving break. So welcome on board, Lucas, and welcome on board, Sesh.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us. Yeah, it's always exciting to catch up with you guys and talk about where the industry is evolving.
Right. So let's see. I think how are things going on in your world, Sesh? I know you've been traveling as well. So we'll get started with you. How are things with you?
Yeah, all good. I think this month has been, it's never been a dull day for the AI this year, I guess. And just read the S&P 500 report that close to 70% of the capex investment has been on AI related stuff. So it is interesting how things are evolving, and we also hear a lot about the circular funding. Or there was actually a term I found out about this. Um, it actually comes from Greek mythology, where you have the snake's tail getting bitten by the snake itself. So I forget the name. I mean, do you one of you know that it starts with O or something, Ocopolis or something like that. So it was an interesting. So it's called that cycle is also kind of snowballing the whole cycle. So it's interesting. Yeah, we can get into more details on each of the categories that you talk about as we go further.
Sure. We'll excited to talk about those things. Over to you, Lucas. How are things with you? I know you've been traveling as well a lot, and I believe what things with you in your world.
Oh, thank you for asking. All good. I'm back home. The reason for travel was because I presented thought leadership on how business transformation will look like in the future, especially considering an agentic AI future. So we're talking about AI, and already people are excited about hearing what it will look like once not just AI, but agentic AI will transform their businesses. So that was a lot of intensity, but also very rewarding and fun.
Awesome. So let's get started with you, Lucas. I know, as always, we do this four buckets, starting with the infrastructure investments, and then the product launches, and the other two, ecosystem, and then the ethics. So what do you think? I think which bucket you want to get started with, Lucas? I know a lot of interesting things have been happening.
I think, contrary to my favorite bucket normally, which is innovation and product launches, obviously, right? That's my home turf. Let's talk about AI infrastructure and investment, simply because I think there's a misconception. And I kind of want to put a very contrarian thought out there. And I hope your listeners will either push back or convince me otherwise. But what's currently happening, so for a little bit of context, Google has a fully integrated tech stack, meaning when they work with AI, they use their own data centers, their own hardware, their own code and frameworks. And so it's like a fully integrated stack, as they call it. And most importantly, they started, I think, 10 years ago, 2016-ish, to produce their own chips. They're called TPUs, tensor processing units. And they're very optimized for AI workload, right? And so everybody was saying Google has the potential to really undercut the dominance of NVIDIA. And because if the chip is so optimized and it was specifically built for AI, not like with NVIDIA, who first went through iterations of let's do it for gaming, then for crypto, and then ultimately it wiggled its way into like AI, which is an oversimplification. So please don't don't kill me for that. But what I kind of want to hear say is that it's some sort as it's portrayed as a competition, right? There is NVIDIA, the big dog, and then there is Google, and they have the opportunity with the fully integrated stack to build cheaper. And it's like their golden goose or whatever, right? And now this month they came out and said, like, we will sell TPU, load, right? So Anthropic, for instance, can now train on TPUs and did, but also we will sell like the actual TPUs to other people. And it's like seen as like this big clash between Google and NVIDIA. And I think this is wrong. I think, and hear me out, I think that this is the best thing for the market and people everywhere in general. Why? Because TPUs are optimized for cost, right? So they are cheaper, but they're harder to use because the ecosystem in terms of software is not as mature. Now, I believe what will happen is the market will like specialize and differentiate. For the cutting edge, for the innovation, for new models, the only game in town will remain NVIDIA. It's like the most versatile. And when you want to quickly iterate and not optimize, when you try to will something new into existence, that's the stack that all the researchers know, that everybody's comfortable working with, right? That will be what they will use, right? On the other side, if we get cheaper inference, right? Or at least competition in that space. I would say NVIDIA will probably claim that their overall cost for inference is still cheaper than Google's. But let's say at least we get competition. I think that there will be Jevons paradox, meaning that if you get more of it, even more demand will come. Because I believe that intelligence and the demand for intelligence is highly, highly elastic in a sense that well, actually, that's not the best way of putting it. I think that the demand is way bigger than the supply. So if you can bring down the cost, you will see a big uptake in the demand. So supply can drive demand when it comes to intelligence. That's my assumption. So I think framing it as a competition and Google is squandering away their one like advantage or something like that, or the market will implode because of it. No, I think we'll have cheaper solutions for AI and NVIDIA will still make a killing because at the bleeding edge, when you have more investment, more ROI, more like success with the technology, even more people will want to innovate. So I think the current way how it's framed out there is exactly wrong. And that's why I wanted to start with AI infrastructure, because I feel like everybody is telling the wrong story right now.
I think that's an interesting take, Lucas. I to some extent, I think I agree. I know the markets have been reacting in different ways, but I believe, yeah, the way you put it, it gives a meaning, saying that okay, the innovation and the new things will still continue with NVIDIA, and then of course the when you do inferencing, I think it might be still cheaper with NVIDIA, but the competition will increase, and of course there is a bigger pie, or there is a bigger supply out there with when Google gets onto this is getting into this space with TPUs. Yes, so over to you, Sesh. I think, do you want to comment on this, or do you want to get into an additional thoughts about this particular category or this particular bucket?
Yeah, definitely we can. I agree in the sense of what Lucas was saying. Um, so definitely the story of the TPU having a lower cost per token is resonating, especially with the launch of Gemini 3, which we will talk about during the innovation, I guess. Uh, and then directionally also you can see that Meta has promised to invest billions of dollars on Google TPUs related cloud services just to diversify its supply chain, reduce costs, leverage the specific advantages that Google provides, right? So it is getting there, and it's an interesting situation evolving. At the same time, it's also um, good in terms of competition. It's not just about a cost story. If you see, just to I think meander into the Google, the Gemini 3 story, right? If you see the recent Gemini 3 Pro, of course, coupled with its Nano Banana, what's called as the Photoshop killer story, right?
Right.
It is kind of doing pretty well in the normal AI benchmarks. Um, I'm not an expert on all the benchmarks, but if you, it's 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 said that it is actually topping all of the standard benchmarks, and when compared to like GPT-5 from OpenAI or Claude, it is actually doing better than them. So uh, that's that's kind of an interesting story. It's not just about the TPU; it's also a combination of TPU as well as the software aspects of it. Now, what will be interesting is how the software is switched on top of the TPU and still how the benchmarks perform, right? That's will be the true test, and then how we will actually see the competition evolve.
So, I also see that there is this play with a lot of investment happening around. Uh, and of course, Microsoft also getting into the talks with what do you call Anthropic's cloud and other things going on. So I know we will talk about that in our integration bucket. But going back to you, Lucas, any additional thoughts that you want to bring up in this category about the investments and the infrastructure space where there's still, I know this, what do you call, I think earlier uh, you were mentioning, Sesh, about this, the saying, the Greek saying or whatever, the the snake tile getting bitten.
Yeah.
So,
I guess it's all about circular investments and bubbles, right?
yeah,
Is
yeah,
this
yeah.
a further proof that we are in a bubble? And I think, again, for me, maybe the most interesting aspect of it is that I read a recent article where it talked about bubbles not necessarily being bad. So I don't want to say there is no pain for people once a bubble pops and the markets go down. That like I fully acknowledge that there is pain, but
Right.
there's an argument that a bubble also is some sort of a way of willing investments into existence that otherwise would be hard to achieve and to orchestrate or like synchronize certain ideas, right? So, for instance, in the .com bubble, right, we laid all the dark fiber that was necessary for the hyperscalers, whether it's Google, Microsoft, or the doesn't matter, for any kind of company that uses SaaS technology, right? To have like the infrastructure necessary to build the products that fueled the most amazing growth story of the last 25 years, right? I mean, we're talking today about all this innovation simply because it's possible. And without the railroad, without the like the railroad tracks of the 2000s, it wouldn't have been possible. And the same is true. It's not only like the investment in physical goods like infrastructure, it's also the allocation of attention, meaning we consolidate behind HTML. We all now want to build like technology on the web, and it got cool, or it became clear like what the back then it was, I guess, the mean stack, right? Like the technologies that were used, and we brought down the cost of like innovation in that space by orders of magnitude, right? So in a way, if you are we in a bubble? Yes. Is it necessarily terrible? It sounds really harsh because people will go like, Lucas, you're absurd, right? Bubbles pop and real people get hurt. Right now, though, the people who invest all their money sitting on cash fountains. Google had a what 100 billion quarter in revenue, right? It's like absurd. So it's not like the people who are investing are over leveraging like in let's say like 2008 when everything was debt fueled. I'm sure there are some parts where debt now pops up and it's not pretty. But there's two things that I see are different. A, the companies who are making the biggest investments are currently, or at least to my understanding, wildly profitable and have huge cash liquidity, like surpluses, right? And the second thing is it's not the case that we're installing any of the infrastructure and then it's just idling and people are like, well, we might need it. Like, as we understand it, every single data center that comes online from day one is booked and is utilized. So there is certainly not what often like happens in those bubbles, that there is a over investment that is then not even like utilized. But right now, the data centers are going ahead at full steam, and the people paying for it are mostly like financing it out of cash flow, right? So yes, we're in a bubble, but I wouldn't say that we're in the same kind of bubble that we have experienced differently. So I would assume that yes, it will pop, but it will probably be something that's very different to the things we've seen before. And so that's my take on it. I think I'm on a contrarian take today. I think in this episode I will be very contrarian.
Yeah, see, I know these predictions. I think I know there are I'm not against these predictions, but I know there are a lot of people doing a lot of these predictions about how or when this is going to break or this is going to pierce or other things. But I think your take is a little different, that bubbles always doesn't need to be bad, and how they can evolve or how they can assimilate into what is happening here. When you compare it with the 2000s, with the fiber optics cable being laid out by Cisco's of the world and other things. And of course, here now we are talking a lot about data centers and other things. So far, so good, I believe. Like you said, much of these data centers that are being built, they have been productively being used. And these GPUs that are being manufactured, I think they have this timeline of whatever that 7 to 10 years or whatever, and then they have been leveraged as and when as needed. And of course, we are seeing the results. So coming to you, Sesh, any comments on this particular aspect? I know you also made this statement about this circular kind of investments going on before we jump into the second category.
Yeah, I mean, I think just to the term is called AI Ouroboros. Apparently, Ouroboros is a serpent, a Greek mythology serpent dragon that's eating its own tail. So that's what is good. So in that sense, like um, I tend to agree with what Lucas also mentioned, right? it is the circular investments as it's presented is still from people who are cash rich, and it also has positive developments. Like how often, when would anybody have predicted that Meta will partner with Google, right? That's
Yeah.
their arch rivals, to so to say. But now we are hearing that they're partnering in Google. Meta is investing in Google TPUs and building. Same thing with OpenAI has investments from both Microsoft Azure as well as from Oracle, and they are both altering their cloud infrastructure to make sure that things are optimized for OpenAI. Like how often, when would anybody have predicted that Oracle and Microsoft could have partnered together to do something, right? So, in the sense, like it's uh, changing old rivalries into partners. So that's a positive development. Speaking of the category, like and the infrastructure, right? So uh, just to close the loop, there have been good amount of investments, more targeted in the sense like Amazon has invested 50 billion on a Gov Cloud AI infrastructure, which creates kind of a more targeted investments that has got a long term, less switching costs. So it isn't just a data center, but it's more like I would say like a geopolitical chess move. It positions AWS as the secure, specialized backbone for federal agencies. I think we'll see more of this. I think last time we also spoke about uh, how there is Euro specific AI cloud infrastructure getting built, and then there are tenders with which are getting floated with ethical constraints added, all of those things. So you'll see more of these coming up, which will be an interesting thing. Um, yeah, that's that. And on the topic of bubble, I think we spoke earlier as well that um, even during .com, we had the Amazons, we had the pet stores. Time will tell us which ones are the pet stores and which ones are Amazon. It's not like the whole .com bubble burst and we lost the entire investments. Basically, you'll have the right winners evolve. I think that's the same thing that's going to happen right now. People are not going to get hurt. It's just that the Darwinism will take shape there. Yeah.
Right, right. So let's now continue with you, Sesh. I think let's get into the product innovations and the product launches. I know there's a lot happening in that space as well. I know you briefly mentioned about the product launch. I think with Gemini and other things. Do you want to get started with that category and talk about?
Yes, definitely. I think from a product launch, there are I would say three key things. I know Gemini kind of came in late, so people more talk about it more. But I think there were three key things which are pretty interesting from a month perspective. One is, of course, the Gemini 3 Pro, and also demonstrating that the content cost per token is vastly better with this new high performant model. It's also a proof point to like a tightly integrated TPU hardware that can match or exceed NVIDIA's best GPU in large scale AI training and inference. So that's definitely a good development, and of course tied to it is also the application stack with the Nano Banana coming in, which is offering like kind of pixel perfect text rendering that other models still struggle with, which is a good development. So, having said that, I feel the other key investment innovation, which is not technically November, it is more like late October, was the Tesla's Optimus update. Um, I did see some coverage and videos. So what I feel is very interesting. I'm not sure if Elon is thinking in those terms, given that he's very smart. He might have played this chess move. I think in the with the Optimus humanoid robot, uh, from performance standpoint, it's walking faster, balancing better, uh, for handling delicate objects very well. All of that is great. Um, but I feel while everyone else is fighting for like screen time, Tesla is probably fighting for the factory floor, right?
Hmm.
So with the labor shortage in manufacturing being real, if Optimus can genuinely replace a human worker on the line for like 20K one time investment, but ROI infinite, it's a major like a winning bet, I guess, right? It's a major player betting the farm on hardware AI this year, right? I feel that the yeah, Tesla Optimus innovation is pretty key. And then Tesla's decided to fight a different battle where people are not really looking, right? In addition to all his grok and all those things, he's also innovating here, which is very interesting. And then the third thing, which we have seen quite a bit on the last month as well, on how Anthropic is really becoming the leader on the enterprise space, right? uh, with its like 4.5, it's kind of a coding beast, as they refer to it right now. It's crushing all benchmarks in software engineering and complex data analysis, and also boasting like very large context window of the order of days, right, which is unheard of. And practically, they say it can read a company's entire legal history in one shot. So they're really positioning it for the enterprise, which we don't see from the others. Maybe others are all doing, but these guys have really amped up their story, and they are kind of becoming the while OpenAI is more focused on the consumer, Anthropic's like locking down the enterprise, which is pretty interesting move, and they're also doing pretty well. So I think those were three things which are interesting. And then yeah.
Yeah, great that you brought up some of these topics around that we were discussing at the end of October as well on the Optimus thing, and then the new innovations happening. Coming to you, Lucas, what are your thoughts in this interesting space of product launches and innovations? I know this is one of the interesting space you always talk about.
Yeah, it's definitely my favorite category, right? I do want to focus on maybe just one, namely the launch of Google Gemini 3. I mean, there's tons of stuff, but I would say one aspect that I found noteworthy or I think want to talk about is so first of all, they crushed all the benchmarks with one exception. I think it was in software development where Anthropic like eked out a tiny lead, right? But essentially all the rest went to Google. And on one hand, this is very impressive, and it shows that scaling is not dead. People who are saying that pre-training or post-training RL like are dead, meaning for people who are not familiar with it, that the entirety of the internet and the data has been used and it's really hard to scale up just like we did in the last couple of years. I think that myth has been dispelled and there's still wiggle room to use data and training and just by putting more data and more compute at this with the same ideas essentially behind it. Not that they did, right? They innovated also in terms of algorithms, but there's still room, right? Which is impressive. I think it's impressive because at the beginning of the year, everybody was saying like Google is the titan that's toppling over and it's the end of an era which barely lasted 25 years, right? So it's kind of amazing to see that they came back with a vengeance, right? I mean, they went from, oh, is Google dead? And I'm sure if you Google it, like you will find articles that aren't too old where people will proclaim the end of Google, right? And now they are like swinging hard, right? They cooked. But for me, I would say the most interesting aspect that I want to talk about is I think we now have line of sight towards an era in the future where all of the benchmarks will be saturated. So the important benchmarks that are not completely like absurd, right? I mean, there is, for instance, ARC 2, which is a benchmark essentially just designed to be hard for AIs, right? And we will still have benchmarks that are hard for AIs, but let's assume like the regular stuff, right? Write me emails, do like science stuff and be valuable for regular tasks kind of stuff. Where all of that is saturated, meaning that it's really hard to go better than where we are, and it's above or at least at the level of human performance, mastery performance, right? At the very height of human achievement. And I'm like, huh, if we already have line of sight to such a future, like what does that entail? And I think for me, the most important takeaway is that yesterday was the best time to start. Today is the second best time to start, to think really deeply about what kind of benchmarks do you need, as a leader at your company, to understand what you really want to use. Because as soon as it commoditizes and it looks like everything is the same, it's really important to understand how much of an impact and difference it makes for your business. And I think in the beginning, you have good proxies with these benchmarks because you can say, like, look, as it goes up, I can always just pick what is up. And there is some correlation between being good in benchmarks and what I need. But as soon as everybody converges to the same line, it becomes really important to understand
Really?
how good it is for you and your business. And then that's not like questions about punctuation in ancient Persian texts. It's about, does my business process run correctly? Is that suitable for my HR or whatever it is, right? Whatever differentiated like value creation you need for your business, you cannot abdicate responsibilities for knowing how this stuff performs for your use cases. I think we got a free pass for the last 3 years. We could just say like, woo, whoever wins. Now is the time to do your homework, or we all need to do our homework, right? And have a firmer grip on what will make the difference. And it's not just capabilities, it's cost, it's security, it's control, right? There is a whole slew of things when I say benchmarks, and I don't simply mean does it like solve abstruse and very arcane kind of like problems.
Right, right. No, great that you brought up this aspect of the different variables when you talk about benchmarks and how these are fast changing and how enterprises and businesses have to think or look forward. It's a great example, I think, when we connected with the new Gemini's innovation with Gemini 3.0 and other things. So staying with you, Lucas, I would like to now kind of veer our conversation into the other category that we keep talking about, the ecosystem and the partnerships and the integration space, right? I know there is a lot happening out there. So any thoughts or any big things that you think happened in the month of November,
Yeah,
noteworthy?
I will be very quick because I feel like I already used a lot of airtime. But what I think will be interesting for people to think about or get an opinion on is that old allegiances only hold for so long in this current cloud AI race world kind of regime. What I mean by that, so it used to be the case that Microsoft was really tightly connected to OpenAI, right? It was essentially seen as the OpenAI cloud. And then we heard that now, or at least recently, we heard that Microsoft would add Anthropic, which are ex OpenAI like employees who went away and founded their own company. So there's
Right.
definitely some sibling rivalry, right? There, I don't think that they're on the best of terms without implying anything. That they are now also going to the Azure cloud, right? And so whether you look at TPUs, whether AMD chips, whether you look at OpenAI or Anthropic or any other provider, it feels like in the beginning there were like demarcation lines and the parties were lined up on the one or the other side, right? And I feel like now there was a button blend, and it's just like there is no clear segregation. It's like it's one, like it's a wild mix of everything. But I'm not saying that it does not make sense. Why? Because Anthropic really, really focuses, and I think rightly so, and justifiably so, on the coding space, right? As we talked about just a couple of minutes ago, they eked out a win in the software development part. And that is arguably by far the most important use case for corporate B2B environments, right? And then it makes perfect sense to go where they need to go, namely where the big corporate entities are, namely with the hyperscalers.
Right.
And they are either with AWS, Azure Cloud, or GCP. And so they have to be there. So again, it makes sense, but judging by the past, it's kind of like a weird, like not switcheroo, but it's a kind of like a turning upside down kind of situation with a lot of the allegiances. I guess that's just a really strange way of saying it's a fun and exciting soap opera if you're into tech drama.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a lot happening now out there with these different three-way partnerships, whether it is with Anthropic, with Microsoft and NVIDIA in this trilateral ecosystem, or whether it is the other partnerships that are happening in the infrastructure plus supply chain, where OpenAI kind of working with Foxconn built AI data centers and other things. So coming to you, Sesh, any thoughts that you would like to bring up or in this category, in this bucket?
Oh yeah, you just made a quick mention about the Foxconn, right, which is an interesting reference in the context of integration, right? This brings, I mean, it's more like hardware and data center kit manufacturing collaboration. This brings vertical integration of the AI stack. Um, the kind of software companies hedging supply chain risk by partnering with larger manufacturers. Which is a good uh, story to build on, right? Um, Specifically from an integration standpoint, what was interesting was I'm not sure if you guys have seen Walmart announced instant checkout agent by partnering with by using um, OpenAI. Uh, it's actually it's begun. I don't think they've rolled it out, but they've posted a demo. Uh, uh, it's the instant checkout agent. It's powered by OpenAI, and it isn't just a chatbot. It's a shopping agent that integrates with your um, inventory and budget. So and it's kind of conscious commerce, right? You can say I need a taco night for six under $30. So it can glue together all of those things and then make some recommendation based on the budget as well as your interest and your profile, and then come up with a recommendation and finish the checkout, right? That is a good integration story. That, I mean, it's not surprising. I think Google also announced something during their annual event, but now we are seeing more and more more and more merchants integrating it and then coming up with story. I think that was an interesting integration story. As well, in the context of integration, we are also now seeing more like this rise of agentic unicorns, so to say. GenSpark, they got a 1.25 billion valuation, which purely an integration play. But they are like a workplace agent automation solution, essentially digital employees that handle repetitive or back office work. And that company getting a 1.25 billion dollar valuation means like you're seeing more of these agentic unicorns also coming up um, in the marketplace. I'm sure you'll be seeing more more vertical specific targeted unicorns as well coming up like this, but it's pretty interesting. And of course, we've all heard stories about drug discovery unicorn agents coming up very soon. So I'm seeing this trend kind of a good development. We spoke about bubble bursting, but you're actually talking about new streams of companies coming up with a lot of good valuation. So that I felt was interesting from an integration standpoint.
Anything from your end, Lucas, you want to add before we move to the other bucket?
I think I'm just very excited to see what's coming up next because it feels like we're also in a little bit of a showmanship, one-upping each other kind of situation with all the integration and services. It's like whatever just happened is just like the motivation for the competition to go a little bit harder and faster. So I'm not normally the biggest fan of that. I have my category that I love dearly, but I'm willing to maybe be more excited about it in the future simply because how dynamic it is. I think it's pretty fantastic.
Right, right. So let's come over to usage, and let's get into the final bucket, which we don't talk too much about it for this AI ethics and policy, governance, and risk kind of things. I know there is quite a bit happening here as well. There is this new White House draft executive order where they're trying to this U.S. executive order that would preempt all the state AI laws, so that they replace it with a unified federal standard and a shift towards this national harmonization. So there are a few things going on over here in the space of AI. So any thoughts, I think, that you would want to bring up in this bucket or in this category?
In this category, actually, there's a lot to say. At the same time, it's a mindset thing, right? Do we feel ethics and things at this stage the stifler of innovation, or is it a necessary guardrail? Where I think a few things, like I was just seeing an interview by Jeffrey Hinton. He's seen as the father of thing, right? He made a very good comment. Maybe it was obvious for others, but for me it was very enlightening. He was saying that we are getting into a phase where AI will be more powerful than human being. We all know, right? Now, which is the one scenario where a more powerful creature is actually protective uh, of a less powerful creature. And he was saying that the only scenario that happens is when the mother is actually taking care of the child. So he was saying that we are at the stage where when we are creating AI, we should build AI with maternal instincts so that it grows, thrives, but still has protector, right? That I felt was a very kind of ethical approach to AI. I don't know what it means from building AI which with maternal instincts, but he is the god of AI, so I will trust him that he knows more than that. Um, one funny thing also bordering on top on the ethical part of it, right? Because it did bring up a debate. Was I'm not sure if you guys know. I believe couple of weeks back, the number one chart buster in country music uh, was an AI generated song. Did you guys know about it?
Yeah.
Check it out. It's called Walk My Walk. It's a country song, and it is by a singer breaking rust. It's a number one country digital songs in sales chart. However, the singer and the song are all AI generated, right? So it's been streamed about 2.1 million times on Spotify, several million times on YouTube, and it's actually sparking a huge debate. Like, how ethical is this that now you're having a chartbuster uh, which is completely AI generated, right? So should we debar? I mean, should we exclude such things from billboards? That's an ethical question that is coming up. But I actually listened to it; it was pretty good, and I actually tried it out. I just went to you guys can try it out. You can go to Suno and
Yeah.
then say what I tried was like I just said make a song about the TV show Friends, and it generated a pretty nice, unique song based on Friends, right? So it's that easy to create a chart buster just on AI. So I felt it's an interesting debate, but it's a question is like, do I really like the song or because the song was created by the human being? I actually lean more around I like the song, right? So I don't care much about the ethical aspects of creating music through using AI as long as it sounds good. So, but then yeah, I felt it was you can see the evolution of times where this is going to happen. We are all used to auto tunes, but now you're having a net new song and a singer with over 12 million views on YouTube, and then becoming a chart buster. That I think is the first, I guess.
Yeah, so I think that's an interesting thing that you brought up, Suno, because the last couple of months I've been using that in various different occasions. And I was like even quoted by a couple of my friends saying that, hey, you're using too much of AI music. You need to be careful. And sometimes, and when we talk about all this ethics, and I'm pretty sure the policies are being framed. I think they will come into play of how you can use it or how you can consume it. But I'm pretty sure, like what you mentioned, currently we are in that kind of a phase where it's like a child's play. We go and try out different things, not exactly understanding the outcome or exactly understanding what is going to happen, the the real policy uh, behind it or the ethics behind it or who is getting really benefit out of it. But I know that things are gonna evolve here. So coming to you, Lucas, what are your thoughts? I know this is one of those buckets or one of those categories. It's always it is tough to kind of bring the right aspects because there's a lot changing here in this space.
Yeah. And it feels like no matter what I will say after Shesh's comments, like I will just lose, right? Those were really inspirational and really interesting insights. Um, I think where I gravitate towards, and there is tons of interesting and in terms of how this technology will change our society, like interesting aspects. Because, well, I think what people underestimate is that AI is not just a tool, right? Every technology used to be a tool. It was an expression of us working with the world, but AI is a cultural innovation. It has an opinion. I mean, we shape it, but like a pair of scissors does not have an opinion about like morality or ethics. If you ask an AI what is virtuous, what are ethics, it will give you an answer, right? It will try to be balanced, but we never had a tool and an innovation that by itself was not just like a tool and through the expression of us, then a statement or a change factor in the world. It by itself is a cultural technology. And I think that sets this category aside and why it's so important. I will make it super short. What I'm interested in, because it feels very tactical, but very important and extremely boring, is just that in terms of lawsuits and copyrights, that
Yeah.
we see now like a lot of the litigation catching up with bigger companies. Whether it's in Germany, whether it's in India and other countries, we see like more and more of those cases reaching the higher courts. And we'll see injunctions. We'll see like now the real messy, real life, like technology meets culture is also like grinding at the level of legislation and litigation, right? And it's not sexy, and it's not so interesting, but it makes a huge difference. And to me, the one example I always think of is when first aviation, like commercial flight, took off. In the US, where I live, right, there is like this rule that if you own land, you also own the rights of the soil and the air above, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so in the beginning, like people, and I think that was like totally like logical thought, said like, hey, if a plane flies over my land, they have to pay us, right? Because they're infringing, even if they're like kilometers above, they're infringing of the sovereignty of our space. And I think it went to the highest courts. I'm not exactly sure how that played out, but I know that the judges ruled like this technology is really important and we cannot go on with what used to be the case. And it's there needs to be like an ability for this technology to be free. Just imagine what aviation would have looked like, or better put, what it would not have looked like if every commercial flight would first have to clear all the license rights before there was internet, before there was really software to, well, no software at all, right? Not even a computer.
Yeah.
To get the licensing rights to fly over the territory of a myriad of people, right? And to me, I see it now a little bit. Are we now grinding down like this innovation, or will be there a similar case where we then say like, look, this is just a different era. This is a different like leap. We now need to come up with new legislature. We need to like create a new space for this technology. I'm not necessarily advocating for it. I'm just saying that this is an unsung aspect of this,
True.
what we're seeing and living through. And it's at this point not yet decided how the dices will fall.
Right. Right. Yeah, I think great conversation. I know we are coming to the end of our November news roundup. I know we are all looking forward to end the year with a bang. Any thoughts, any closing thoughts from you, Lucas? What you're looking forward in the next 3 to 4 weeks?
I would say what I'm really looking forward to is the predictions for next year, of and like the from the people who are in the market of creating predictions. I'm excited because it feels like the future is so uncertain. Even more so than in the last years, right? Is there a bubble? Will like everything go to the moon? Will we see AGI? Like, I think I'm weirdly excited about like this tradition of in the end of the year, every pundit and thought leader coming up with a couple of predictions, and I might as well create a couple of my own, and we'll talk about it or post on LinkedIn about it.
Interesting. Good, good, good. I think anyway, I think we should try to talk about it in our closing conversation for next month. Over to you, Sesh. Any closing thoughts and what you're looking up for the next 3 to 4 weeks? We're coming to the end of the year.
Um, yeah, I guess nothing particularly. It's going to be quiet. Like somebody was saying that end of the year, of course, we will have more AI generated company statements which says we continue to deeply care about safety, and anyways here is the 10x more autonomous model and stuff like that. So I think we will see more of that coming up, but we'll see. Maybe next year, time to make resolution, like let's hallucinate less or something like that. So
Well, glad, nice talking with both of you, and looking forward for our year-end conversation next month.
thank you.
And thank you, and I'm excited about next month as always.
All right, welcome back to our part 2 of the November AI news roundup around the globe. And here I'm with Manjeet. So just to give you a quick background. We are recording this a day before Thanksgiving. So, like I've mentioned, things are getting busier during the Thanksgiving time. We still did want to release what happened in the month of November, and that is and hence the attempt of recording this in a couple of different occasions, yesterday and today with our guests. So welcome back, Manjeet. I hope how are things in your world? In your world, and I know a lot of changes, a lot of news around in the month of November.
Yeah. No, I think first of all, thanks for the flexibility. I think this is Thanksgiving week, and we were supposed to chat yesterday. I was late, and then so now it's kind of next day morning. So um, things are accelerating. I think continue to accelerate, and well, we can chat about I think a couple of them. November is an interesting month. A lot of new releases, and then right, and I think it'll continue for another 2 weeks. And what my take is it will not even slow down in December. So that's kind of, of how fast things are. And then, yeah, just a model layer or kind of a different layer. So overall, yeah, no, super excited to. I think this is, as I say, this is a good cadence for me to think about what happened in the month of November. We can dive in.
All right, so let's get started. I think in our usual bucketed approach, that's how we are trying to get the information across. So I was thinking like maybe we start with our regular approach about the AI infrastructure and the investments. I know there's a lot of investments happening in this space, and there's a lot of investments around the globe in the space of AI. So what is your take on this? Where do you see things? How did November happen and in this space?
Yeah, so I think we continue to talk about like, okay, there's a continuous investment in infra, and that includes, in my mind, the chips is the big one, right? And that's when NVIDIA continued to be this. They had a kind of another blockbuster quarterly earning. But one thing I'm looking for personally, and I'm kind of trying to follow the trend is. If I see across companies and then the previous waves of, let's say, the platform shift and transformation, starting from internet to mobile to now, let's say, AI, which are the companies that had some sort of a strategy across these layers? And what I'm picking up is the reason Google started to come into more of a dominant space, which is not a surprise.
Right.
Because if you look at their strategy, they have been executing this in the last decade across these three transformations. So, for example, right, when you think about, let's say, the internet era, okay, and then we can kind of correlate it with these 3 or 4 layers we talk about. For example, okay, the infra and compute layer. So in all along the way, they have been building out their hyperscaler and data centers. And then even before they went into data center business, they have been building it out for themselves rather than going and, leasing and other ones. And that puts them in a kind of a very strategic position right now. All of a sudden, like the newer models, they release Gemini, fantastic model, is beating all the benchmarks, but it is trained on their own TPU.
Right.
And here's the thing, it's like, hey, it's not just for us. We can lease it to you, we can sell it to you. So all of a sudden there's interest from Meta, there's interest from other companies, because GPUs are relatively, I would say, cheaper and then consumes less memory or less energy. The same is if you look at the platform, right? Of course, Google started as kind of search plus ads. When mobile came along, they again made a strategic bet to build their kind of Android platform and then the mobile devices, because they saw like Apple was really, really spearheading, but they were able to catch up with Android strategy to a large extent. And then if you look into kind of the AI world now, so of course they have this the infra layer going on, like from the compute layer. from platform standpoint, Gemini is at a very, very good position now. And then they got the distribution. So,
Right.
and we didn't talk much about distribution, I think, recently, but distribution is becoming, I think, really a Trojan horse, because if you have a good solutions
Mm-hmm.
and if you can integrate across the stack, and that's what some of these companies are doing from day one. When they go to the new model, they're like, okay, this is available in Surface, like the search surface, or this is available in your mobile, or this is available in the. So I think the strategy is amazing, because now you're able to cap, the vertical integrate or think, because we have the platform / compute layer. Then we got the distributions with billions of users, and no surprise, I think they're now November month has been really, really good from Google standpoint. And,
Right. Right.
in fact, it put a downward pressure on NVIDIA and OpenAI. Yeah, if you've seen, it's interesting to see, right? These guys now kudos each other, like, hey, good model, Gemini 3, the good model. Sam was saying it, and even Elon Musk, and then it's like, okay, end of the day, we all are friends.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So, and I think that's how it should be, right? The kind of I call it a frenemy, where we are friends, partners, / we also compete in these specific areas.
Right. So I think before we get into the other bucket about the product launches and talk a bit about Gemini, there is also this interconnectivity, or this circle investments kind of thing, which were going on between all these Magnificent Seven, or what that's being said in the market. And then there is also this talk about I know these talks about the bubble, the AI bubble keeps surfacing, because we see these investments, like you rightfully mentioned, from internet era into cloud and now into AI. If you connect back 25 years back, when we had the dot-com bubble, and then later on, I think it evolved into the dot-com burst. But of course, there are still a lot of there are companies that survived through that. There, I think it was more like uh, putting together the fiber optic cables, and then later on we realized that we did not need so much of that. But here it is happening in a different way. I think at least the data centers that are being built and the investments that are going into the data centers, they are still, of course, I think there is a metric which says that we are still not even reached that 40% mark. But I believe I don't know what are your thoughts on that? Do you want to speak a bit about that before we get into the product launches and innovation bucket?
Yeah. So there's three things that, to me, is if we ask, like, hey, are we in a bubble, or right, are some of these investments, are they Ponzi schemes, for example, or whatever kind of, let's say that. There's definitely some flavor of that into these. And the biggest part I'm concerned about is the overvaluation of some of these companies, and right, without having a kind of a very clear, let's say, the market, and then, hey, how you will monetize. Everybody's thinking that the token cost will continue to go down, which I think it will. But then we haven't kind of figured it out, like the whole kind of the monetization angle. So now I think it's the people, like, I was also waiting for NVIDIA's earning, because that, to me, NVIDIA is the leading indicator what's happening in this space. And they had a fantastic quarter. If NVIDIA would have slowed down, there will be a 20-30% correction right away across the board. Or if OpenAI, let's say, is like, okay, we already have 800 million users. If next, let's say in a month or two, if they don't say we have 1 billion user, I think that's where this kind of circular investments and those becomes into question, because so far I felt that OpenAI kind of went too far without, the same simple math. They have a 20 billion in revenue, and how can you make a commitment to invest, let's say, 300 billion, and then overall $1.65 trillion, because There's no way. And it's like, you are not the only game in the town. There are like, and the truth of the fact, the previous thing we talked about is Google catching up, and then, Amazon and these guys will also catch up. Anthropic. So you cannot just like, hey, my model is the best model, and then things change, and there's so much dependent on the model. So only two things matter these days, I think, when you think about whether bubble will burst or not. So one is, let's say that AI chips continue to sell, which means more data centers are being built out and there's a demand. And the second is this model frontier will continue to push boundaries. Because the challenge is, if you see, you can question that, hey, how many of these use cases are actually delivering value or more of economic value? Even though we all keeps on beating all the benchmarks, still there's a big delta between, I call them eval benchmarks, right? Coding and then, all this, anytime new model comes up, there's like, okay, we are beating. But then the adoption and then the actual value, that gaps still continue to increase. And that's where people question, like, hey, is it all bubble? I think it's overvaluation to a large extent. And companies that have strong fundamentals, I think they have nothing to worry, because we are going into the age of intelligence, no matter what. I think there will be some slowdown, but given where we are, I don't think in next few months there will be a slowdown.
Right.
Yeah. Just to give you one concrete example, right? Coding space, right? We talked about vibe coding and many others. And then, so Gemini, when it came up, is like, hey, we are good across the board. And then also a week later, now, Anthropic launched Opus 3.5, and it further pushes the boundaries by a few points, because as you know, the last 10% is very, very hard, or last 15. You go to 60, 70 quickly, and then, and those improvements are happening. So which means we haven't hit the ceiling of how intelligent these models and the systems can be.
And
I think
then that's gonna take some time. I think the last 10%, like you mentioned, the run for the last 10%, I think there'll be a lot more space to grow there, I believe.
Right. Yeah.
So now let's continue into the interesting space of I think product launches and innovations, right? I think we can talk hours together about what is happening in that space, but what are those big things that if you want to talk about in the space of product innovations? I know we see quite a bit going on in the news around the Gemini, Google launching the Gemini 3.0. Then of course the Microsoft's Ignite conference as well. They were talking about quite a few things about their Copilot, their AI agents. So there's quite a bit going on in this space. Some top items that you would like to bring up to the attention?
Yeah, we can touch on, I think, three flavors of that. One is, let's say, the AI coding. I think things are getting better in the sense, Cursor, they said, hey, they have crossed $1 billion in revenue, the fastest company to reach $1 billion. But at the same time, you can question is like, how much more do they have? If the these labs continue to catch up, will you still prefer to use Cursor? And so I think those decisions, nobody can tell, to be honest, how things will play out. Because there's a strong argument on the both side. If you just have the model and then, and you still need to build a lot of other integrations and APIs and ease of use on the top, and you have this large spectrum of these target customers here, starting with people who want to vibe code, who never wrote a single line of code in their life. Then you have people who did the coding in the past and they moved like me, or like you became PM, and now it's like, okay, now it's like, and then there's the pro code developers.
Right.
So I think it's a kind of big spectrum, and that's where you see, I think that space, the AI use in coding through, the pro code IED integration versus kind of these ones, continue to do well. I think in the last 6-7 months, even Lovables and then all these other guys are continue to do well. In the core AI agent space, I'm seeing mixed data and signals. So if you think about the next, the AI agent use cases in the customer service and customer support scenarios. Amazing opportunity, a lot of problems can be solved, and then so that's what I'm saying. Some company you hear the chatter like, hey, do these agents really work, and what's the adoption? And then so I'm seeing a mixed signals. Some companies, some startups like Sierra and a couple of others, they said, hey, we have also crossed ARR as $100 million. But ARR is just one signal. I think there's still a lot of things, and it's like, hey, are you do these product work if you just give to the customer, or you are giving 10 engineers to every customer like FDs to make it work, and then the question comes, is it is scalable? And if yes, if it's yes, what's the margin profile, gross margin? Nobody talks here the gross margin numbers right now. So but at the end of the day, that's where things will come down to. Are you playing on a 5% margin, or are you playing on a 50% margin?
Right.
Because you just go to like 5%, 10%, you're kind of a services business, right? And we have seen, the versus if you go like the pure kind of SaaS, then 60-70% is very, very common. So we'll see. I think probably in a couple of months we see like, okay, hopefully some of these vendors will share their margin profile. I think to look at is do this AI agent will have the same margin profile as the previous kind of SaaS applications. So let's see.
Interesting. So yeah, I think this space is evolving quite a bit, I believe, in the product launches and the innovation space. Now, getting into the bucket of the category of our ecosystem integrations and partnerships and other things. I know this is where Microsoft now it was predominantly viewed as more of an open AI kind of a play. Now they kind of went ahead and kind of started with the partnership with the Anthropic, and then of course this three-way alliance between Microsoft, Anthropic, and NVIDIA picking up quite a bit of its steam, I believe, in November. And so, in the same way, I think there are a lot of tie-ups which OpenAI as well doing with a lot of other firms out there like Foxconn and other things. So, what's your take in this space of these integrations and the ecosystem in the month of November?
Yeah, I will highlight two things. One is I have never seen these partner things changing so fast every month or every quarter. In the previous AI world, these partnership things used to be long-term in the sense, you do it and then you let it run at least for a year or so, or 2 years. And then you see like, okay, if things are not working, you readjust. Here, if you see, everybody's continuing to evaluate every month because this in model and AI, they open up this space where anybody can potentially enter into each other's space. And that's where everybody's having two strategies, the offense strategy and a defense strategy. So anytime, for example, OpenAI and Microsoft used to be, let's say, the marriage made in the heaven, for example, if you go 18 months ago. And now, because it's all, because OpenAI, Microsoft is feeling like OpenAI is coming into their space, and then they are partnering with the competitors, and we don't have the exclusive, even though they were investors and all that. And still, the biggest challenge right now is the cost to serve is very high, even though it has come significantly down. But I think the unit economics of every search you do in ChatGPT, and one fun question I ask, like when I speak, is like usually you have the water bottle in your hand, and then it's like, hey, if you type this query in ChatGPT, do you know how many water bottles get consumed. This is kind of giving a thought-provoking question because, and I tell people, do you know AI is thirsty? It needs a lot of water for cooling, and just the cooling angle, right? And then, so what the point I'm trying to make is the overall. Let's say if we search and all these vendors wants to do more and more search, all of this things cost and everything needs to come down, and that's what's making people are, for example, like, hey, there was only GPU game in the town, and now if TPU becomes available, if Google is somehow figured out how do they can not just for their own use, can we make it for others use as well, suddenly becomes, then all those exclusive partnership with NVIDIA and others, they're like, no, I mean, if the same query, if I'm serving on whatever a fraction of a cent, if it comes down by half, why not? So that's where, again, two things. One is everybody is continue to evaluate their defense and offense strategy. And the second is we collectively, we want to bring this cost and this overhead we have at kind of the infra layer. I think it has to come down by another 1/10 before it becomes as good as kind of a regular Google search.
Right. So this is gonna, this partnership space and the integration space. Of course, the integration space will evolve, because that is how things will have to work, and how do you work with your customers, with your partners, and other things. But even this major partnership space, I believe, like you mentioned, it would have to continue to some extent, I think, until these costs go much further down the lane. I believe we might see a lot more happening in the year of 2026. So before coming into the final category of the bucket, I know this is where we generally do not spend much time on this ethics and policy discussions that happen here. I think, of course, again, I was also talking with Sesh and Lucas in the morning, and then we did touch base between a few things in this category as well. Of course, we like I mentioned, we talked quite a bit about the AI music taking over the chat busters, and here the policies or the ethics. I think those are the things which are there's quite a bit going on out there. And of course, I know you also put an article, and I was also talking about this, the AI music company, the Sunos of the world, which is now starting to evolve. How easy it is to create this music, but what is the implications about the ethics and other things? In this aspect, I want to bring up one other thing. Like, I think in US specifically, a draft White House executive order surfaced that would override the local state AI laws with the national standard. Of course, it's not final, but it's an attempt to clean up a growing patchwork. So I think these kind of things are happening in this space. What's your take about what happened in the month of November?
Yeah, so one is, I call it a kind of AI state war, right? Between like, hey, at a very kind of country level, which will be, let's say, the leader, and of course, there's big kind of race between US and China. And that's where, let's say, Trump administration and federal, and there's like, okay, if we really want to compete with China, which is, the can pass an order and every entire country has to follow, we can't do that here because the state governments and those. So that's where they're trying to kind of at least like, hey, if you want to be competitive and if we need to do, so we do need some sort of executive order mechanism. It will not be that easy. In fact, there's a lot of lobbying going around. All the AI tech companies, they do want some of these state laws to go away, or at least not slow them down. So I think there's a huge kind of the money being spent by I mean, it's easy to search. There's a $500 million plus just to get these. I think it'll continue. It's very hard to tell what will be the right and wrong in the long run. We want to, let's say I'm in the US and you too, and we want kind of, the work in tech and continue to win. But I think at the same time, if we don't continue to think what will be the second degree and third degree impact of that. Starting from the jobs, right? Tech jobs specifically are under huge pressure and contraction. Versus if you look into the rest of the job numbers that comes every month, and then they looks very good. But if I see in my network and my peers, and people are, it's taking extremely long time to find roles, and then specifically, let's say if you're let's say senior engineer or like any kind of tenure of experience. At the same time, it's very hard for freshers and to find jobs right off the college. So it's kind of an interesting if you move too fast and those and what will impact and then the the impact on pretty much kind of everything. I don't know, Raghu, if you have some patterns, I don't know if you want to share, but to me, overall, I think my take is on the job side, it will be net negative, not net positive. Because the moment physical AI starts to really becomes useful, like this humanoid robot, like the picture you have behind you, then we will see more widespread impact. Yeah, some of these demos, they are so crazy. You see from Unitree and others, and that opens up the new, not just, hey, I created this song or I created this text and you copied it. It's just like the things that you do, those will be done by. And then to me, it's like what we will do. I think briefly we chat if we like everybody works 2 days a week or like completely free, then nobody's proactively thinking about universal basic income and those, and like they have been in talk from last 10 years. But putting that into practice with all of this will be, So right now, like, hey, let's go as fast as we can and win compared to, let's say, China or any others. So that's kind of what I'm observing.
Right. I think in the long run, like you mentioned, I think there will be a lot of these topics which will come into play, whether it is the UBI or the other things. But for now, I think when we are running so fast, I think you have to catch up with the competition, whether it is between the countries or between the geographies. This is where ethics is taking a bit of a backseat for now, but I'm pretty sure these laws are going to be coming into play. So how you regulate AI or how to use some of these things which will come into play. I think that was a great example that you've quoted about making music with the text of a prompt, right? I think that's
Right.
getting easier and easier by the day. But how are we going to handle that? How are the music creators of how are they going to survive, or how are we going to use, because it's like the music is being created now, it's becoming like a big machine or a huge big
Right.
model where we dump in all the information, all these kind of things, but you're training on all that data. So what is, who gets what, and what is I think all these things are up for conversations. A lot is going to change, but I think like you mentioned, in the short term, there's a lot of commotion, or there's of course people like us, we are trying a lot of things, understanding how these things work.
Yeah.
Well, I think before we end the conversation for the month of November and looking for December, what's your take? What is that you're looking forward? I know we got another good 2 to 3 weeks before we get into the big holiday season.
I think the agentic commerce is what interesting to see. There are agents, right, and then doing shopping on your behalf, and then how much will go. And so I'll be curious to see some of how it goes and all the security involved in between, and how big players like Amazon's are handling it. So that's one thing. And then, of course, I think people, I don't know if you hear like 996, you work 9 to 9 and 6 days a week. And then some people will not take break and they will continue to work during holidays. And I'm like, okay, because I don't know, I'm not in that camp because life is too short to just continue to work without taking break.
And To close off, any fitness tip or anything that you would like to provide? I think that's one of your favorite topics, I know, as well. In this the next 2-3 weeks, how things are evolving.
Yeah, I would say eye, taking care of your eyes, because what I realized is I was spending a lot of time on screen and then, right, work and reading and all. My eyes are starting to get tired and like, okay, you see the doctor, oh, you're dry, you're not taking care of. So I think my tip is eyes are very important, and you should blink more and look on the screen and sometimes look far in between every 5-10 minutes. If you feel dry, wash them, put some eye drops and take care. Otherwise, so that's kind of sometimes you ignore it, right? Hey, I work out in the morning, like for example, right? And I do it, but every part's like the eyes, ear, and everything requires sometimes special care and attention, and eyes are very important. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful piece of advice. I know the next 2-3 weeks, I think again things will be a bit busier after Thanksgiving,
Right.
and then we wind down for the rest of for the end of the year. Looking forward, Manjeet, for our year-end conversation in a few weeks now.
Yeah, that will be fun, right? Like, hey, without kind of thinking what happened in the 2025. So I think that'll be a great theme. And then we all should think more deeply rather than what happened like more recently, biased toward that. More which things that really moved the needle.
Right.
Not in a, let's say, month by month, but let's say over the last 12 months.
And that brings us to the end of our Thanksgiving special and the November 2025 AI News Sync. From all of us, the XTraw Quorum, thank you for spending part of your holiday with us and riding through another month of breakthroughs, surprises, and game-changing AI momentum. We've got more episodes coming your way, more conversations that matter, and of course, the big year-end AI roundup is just around the corner. So stay tuned. The best is still ahead. Until then, this is the XTraw Quorum signing off. Happy predicting the future with AI technologies.